this won't be a killer a long time, y'all. This won't be a killer a long time. Should be about 15 to 20 minutes. Ask questions as we go along. If you have not spent much time in 2024, the way you start a new file is different, not drastically so. But I think using some of the templates they have when you're an academic is not the best way to go. The default template is still the best, but it's not listed top and center anymore. So I'm going to go to Models, New. I am going to browse for a template. Okay, I am not going to use any of these default templates listed. I'm going to click Browse. And underneath my English Imperial template set is default. That is the one y'all are used to using, okay? That's going to give me my standard elevations, site plan, first and second floor, ceiling plans as a default file. So I'm definitely going to start there. And it's going to start me in level 1. So the next thing that I want you all to do, part of this assignment is picking out a chair, okay, that you're planning on using in your theater. You may find a 3D model of that chair from the manufacturer to pull in. And if you want to use it, it is okay, but I would not use it in your first pass. The reason being is a lot of times those things that you download from a manufacturer, that is the model that they used to manufacture the chair. So if there is a nut, a bolt, a screw, a system that's in there, a lot of times they leave it in. And that chair will have more geometry in it, more polygons than your entire building. And once you make 750 of those, unless you have a super top tier computer, if you invested $5,000, $6,000 in your laptop, it'll probably handle it. Okay, I know mine will not. Now, if the chair manufacturer did their job really well, it might work just fine. But when you are designing early on, lots of no. I just wouldn't. Start with a really simple model that's already in the Revit library, okay? So where I'm going to find that at is Component, Load Family. This is my list of things. If you do not see this large list right here, Libraries, English, Imperial, US, this huge list of things, then you didn't follow the steps early in the semester and get your library content installed. Find me after class. I will walk you through it. Yeah, quick question. Okay, yeah, so there are more methods to do it this way, but you definitely want the library content installed. Much faster, and we'll use it throughout the semester. So if you don't have this big list, definitely talk to me, okay? So chairs are going to be underneath furniture, which is not a shock. The one that I suggest you use, really simple model, does not slow things down, seating auditorium. It looks awful. Like a lot of Revit-y things, it looks terrible. So again, I wouldn't suggest that this be in your final model. I wouldn't suggest this go into your renderings, I mean, it can if you're desperate, right, and you don't have time to swap these things out. But it's not the prettiest one, but it's perfect to work with while you're figuring things out because it's fast and it should be very, very close to the correct dimensions of whatever you're downloading from a manufacturer. Cool? If it's a little bit smaller, take note of that. Make sure you just space them out a little bit more, or you can even get into modifying that model to reflect the correct sizes of what you're looking at. Okay? So I'm going to hit open, and I'm just going to place that, right? So I now have a seat. That seat is living on level 1. Okay, so the first thing that you need to start thinking about designing is the rake. Okay, so the rake is essentially how things are going to step up in your seating arrangement. Everything else we kind of designed to that. That's going to help you establish your line of sight. It's going to help establish the relationship seating to stage, all of those things. And again, like I said, we need to build something that holds the chairs and that modifies the rake without you having to remodel it every time you make a change. So the best method that I have found to do that with, both teaching students and then I've done this professionally multiple times, is using the sweep tool, which is funny because when I teach the sweep tool to y'all in second year, I'm like, and that's the sweep tool and that's what it does. You'll never use it again unless you do a theater. Okay? So, yeah. Exactly. So let's cover the sweep tool conceptually really, really fast, all right? So the sweep is going to be underneath component, and then I'm going to do model in place. I am still, academically speaking, I'm going to put this in generic models. I'm not going to put it in structure. I'm not going to put it in plumbing. I'm not going to do something weird with it. I'm just going to leave it as a generic model, and I'm going to say okie dokie. And I can call this theater rake, or sometimes it's called the bowl, or sometimes it's called risers, whatever you want to do with it. Cool? Or this is one of the rare moments, if you don't want to name it, I won't ever know. Because the names in that, they're not meaningless, but pretty close, okay? So from here, under the Create tab, we are using this sweep tool. So the sweep tool is 2 specific steps. It is a path and a profile. Your path, unlike most Revit things, the path is an open-ended shape, or can be an open-ended shape. It does not have to be a closed loop. Your profile has to be a closed loop to make a solid piece of geometry. So we're going to define a line, and then we are going to sweep a shape along that line. Cool? So just doing something simple that relates. I'm going to launch sweep. I'm going to say sketch a path, and I'm going to start with the line tool, and let's make a path that is about 60 feet long as a simple line. Okay? My profile along that line, okay, what is going to be swept along that line? That's the piece that has to be a closed loop. If I switch to a 3D view, you can see this dashed line. That is the section along the line that the profile is going to be swept, right? So if I were to draw something stupid at this point, I need to say, first I need to say, okay, that is my path. It's a very simple path. Green checky box. I can either select a profile. There's several things preloaded. I tend to not find myself using those. I'm usually going to edit profile so that I can draw people are going to die all over the place on this one. Yeah, it's not good, right? But you can see I can draw along that section, right? So then when I green checky box, I now have a path. I have a profile. When I green checky box again, I have a rake that you should never design. Water gardens. Yeah, exactly. We won't say where because this is going to be on YouTube. We will not mention any Fort Worth names, right? So finished model, I'm now in the overall Revit model. Cool. Let's go to edit this and make it realistic, right? So I'm going to select, edit profile, or edit sweep was that step. Now I'm in this this object's family. Now I can go edit sweep, and now I can see my line and my profile, right? So let's make this much more realistic. So really easy to switch to one of my elevation views at this time and say, let's select that, edit profile, and at this point I can say, let's make this much more realistic, like 4 inches, and then this one would also be 4 inches, and then this one would also be 4 inches. Green checky box, and now I have a really low, nice profile for things, okay? So green checkbox to get the overall Revit model. Let's look at this in floor plan view. Let's take my seat and move it back and put the back of the seat at each step. And now it's really clear what's gone wrong next, right? So let's do another one. I'm going to copy this back to here, right? Little much on the legroom, for sure, right? Another problem, if I look at that in 3D, the seats are not going up, okay? Revit objects, most Revit objects are intelligent objects, but intelligent objects in a program like Revit are going to do dumb things by our standards, right? When we move a seat from here to here, intuitively we think, oh, it'll just move up to that next level. It doesn't. They're intelligent objects, but not that smart. Okay? So we need to set up a pattern that first improves legroom or makes it reasonable. Again, super comfortable, actually, but probably not favorable in terms of revenue generating for number of seats. Yep, and if I am on the 5th row and I think this is going to be great and get there and it ends up being 400 feet back, not so good, right? So we need to fix those things. And then next, what if I want to change those things? What if 4 inches isn't enough? What if I want to sort of make not just a standard rake, but maybe it wants to get steeper as it goes further back? Those things I need to start working my way through. So let's go back and edit the profile one more time. So I'm going to select it, edit in place, select it, edit the sweep, and let's start by editing the profile. So again, in my elevation view, I'm going to select this piece right here, and let's just kind of redraw it. Sometimes it's just so much easier to redraw things, right? So I'm going to start here with a line, and I'm just going to come back 3 feet, and then I'm going to go up 4 inches, right? So I have that profile as a set of stairs, and I can just go copy, 1, 2, 3, trim, that, and do I have any other junk back there? I don't. Green checky box, green checky box, green check box. Back to my plan view, and let's take that seat and move it to that location. Let's see if I've got everything kind of oriented the correct way. Cool? Okay, so I'm a little bit more reasonable now, for sure. But this seat is still sunk into that. Also, if I do want to edit, I don't want to have to go back and re-edit that piece every single time. Okay, so let's start making this rake a little bit intelligent. Okay, so let's go back through those steps again. And you don't need to go back and forth every time. This is for the sake of demonstration. Try and set these things up right the very first time. Okay, so I'm going to select this, edit in place. Let's edit the sweep. And let's go to our elevation. Let's not. Green checkbox, green checkbox. There we go. Let's set up some levels first. You can't do that while you're editing the sweep. An 1/8 inch for a section is a lot. So let's drop that down a little bit. So all that I did there was change my level of detail down to 1 inch equals a foot, more of a section level of detail thinking. And I'm going to take level 1, and I'm going to use copy. And I'm going to move this from here to here. I do not want that to be named level 3. I want that to be row 1. Understand, row 1 could be down here, right? Just saying. So maybe I'd want to start with row 2, but in this case, I'm going to call that row 1. Revit is usually pretty friendly about things like this. So I can go row 2, row 3, row 4. Let's just fix those things and line them up really quick. Click. Click. And maybe I need to go to 1.5 inches. Okay, so at this point, I could take that chair, and rather than it being on level 1, much faster to go ahead and put it on row 1. And now it is locked to row 1, which is convenient because if I tell row 1 to move up to 6 inches, it's now going to move with me. Problem is the rake did not, but I can fix that too. If I select my profile here or my sweep, I'm going to select it, edit in place. Select my sweep again, edit sweep. Select my profile, edit profile. If I take this profile line and drag it onto row 1, you are going to see this little lock symbol. Guess what the lock symbol does with that line? It locks it. Yay, right, pretty easy, right? Lock it. Let's do level 2 or row 2, lock. Row 3, and I'm just pulling it off, putting it back on, lock. 4, lock. Green checkbox, green checkbox, green checkbox. Now I can say that is back to 0, 4. Chair moves, suite moves. I could say this is not 1 foot 4, but that is 4 feet. It's going to move that rake with me, right? No matter where it goes. It's going to start pushing and pulling all of those things. If I wanted to change the dimensions front to back, I could do that as well by running a dimension string under architecture, not under architecture, but under annotate, align, and I could tag each one of these. And then as I'm editing these, it will move as well. I have never felt the need to do that. Those I tend to have locked in place much closer. You're going to work not at the minimum standard of code, but what you think is the right distance. And usually you're going to lock that in. It's not going to change a lot. But you could. But you need to use a dimension string to do that. So let's drop this back down to 1, 4. So the next thing is getting the seats configured correctly within that. Okay. So again, I could select it and do copy. And I could even select multiple. And I could kind of go, well, that is going to copy from here to here to here, because I know that those are on each other's edge. And then I could select more of them, and I could copy more of them. But that's what I was talking about as being the fast track to getting carpal tunnel syndrome, as well as it takes a lot longer. And it also doesn't really work like your chair manufacturers actually work. Okay? When you buy into a good manufacturer's system, you are going to give them a starting point, an ending point, and a number of seats. And they are going to work within the 2 or 3 inches of play that their seating system has to make sure that there's no gaps in the seats, all of that kind of thing. They have the variables built into their system. So you can provide a starting point, an ending point, and it will all work and look correctly. So do not get incredibly hung up with that in Revit. You'll just beat yourself up and spend a lot of time working on things that your shop drawing process and your manufacturers will take care of for you later. Okay? So the faster way to do things like this is a tool set. Might have used it, probably not, called an array, which is right here. So with an array, I can select my first object. I can select array. And by default, it is going to be set to linear. And by default, it is going to be set to second. Okay, if I do array and second, I can go, it's going to be here, and then that's kind of where my second seat is, and I think I want 20 of them. It will do that, which is really not how we work when we're thinking about chairs and seating. Okay, so let's go away from the default. I'm going to go array. I am going to do last seat. So I'm set to linear and last seat. Last seat allows me to go, I'm going to start here at this location. I'm going to select an outside edge of that seat. I'm going to place it at the edge of my rake. Now I can input a number of chairs, like 20. Oh, that was a really lucky guess, right? Maybe I could squeeze in 22. No, starting to overlap. 18. They don't need cup holders that size.
But know that right now he's on a straight line. If he starts to curve things, it's going to get a little weird. So
That's where we go next. Because probably there'll be several of you that go with a straight shape. And those can work really well. Plenty of theaters have them. Was Moody this way? Or was Moody in an arc? Yeah, Moody was straight, right?
wide proceeding, the seats are the same.
Yeah, And that theater was not so bad. In fact, I mean, it was freaking great, you guys. That was, I mean, that was a beautifully laid out
If you're
set.
sitting in the front row just like here, you're trying to look at that screen.
Yeah. And I'm singing and dancing here. It's not so comfortable.
Right.
So you really have to think about, especially first row, it mitigates itself as you move further back. But it isn't always the most favorable. It depends on width of your seating, size of the stage, what you're going for in terms of design. Clearly, Moody was like, it is very clear, it is very straightforward. Perhaps putting an arc for the seats in there would have just thrown off the whole, feel of the space. So didn't do it. But many of you, I'd say half or more, will have an arc to your seating, right? So that's linear, right? And I can hold that array and again, move things around as much as I need to. Let's do one more row with it just for fun. So if I want to do next row, copy. And well, if it's a straight thing, I could just copy the entire row, right? Well, actually I can't. Interesting. If I were to copy the entire row, let's look at what happens really quick. So if I copy that entire setback, once it is an array, I have lost my ability to set its height. Because it's no longer thinking about itself as a chair, it's thinking about itself as an array that happens to be made up of chairs. Okay? As long as I move row 1, those are going to move because that entire array is also associated with row 1, but it's not going to move together. So let's go through that just really fast. I can select one chair, copy, place it. I am going to break it from that array. So it's now back to being a lonely chair again. I'm going to run array. It is the last. It's going to remember my defaults. Linear, last, edge to edge. There were 20 of them. Oh, what did I do wrong, y'all? Son of a... Undo, undo. I really like to do examples where I do the wrong things, so you know to do the right thing. Yeah. Row 2. Right? Now it's setting correctly. Now I need to run the array. Cool? I'll save you guys for watching that again.
Now, I will say, because I was going to say it before you made the mistake, I don't remember which theater we were in. One of the people that presented to us talked about, you'll notice that this seat does not line up behind that seat. The minute you do this, just like sitting down there and looking this way is a problem, that cowboy in front of you with that 10-gallon hat.
Name Nathan.
or the beehive, heritage is a real problem.
I got no names for that.
These things begin to move around. I don't know if you paid any attention, or if you were in the situation at the WinSphere, but I said we had a guy who was tall, and he was right here, dead center. I was like this the whole time because I was directly behind.
Cool. So yeah, those are all things to think about. And the arc helps with that. Because by default, it's going to start offsetting your seats.
And so does the ray. Part of the reason for the ray is view. So up here in front, you guys don't have that much of a problem. Same this. The farther back we get, the less you see what's going on out on the screen. So we break the floor to be able to get a clear view.
Yeah, so just to play around with that, how quickly we can do that, right? So let's say that we wanted to change these to a 1-foot rake all the way up. All I need to do is come in and change my numbers. Oops. And type correctly. Right, and that model has reshaped itself. So this is building a parametric model. Again, it's doing the same thing that Dynamo, Grasshopper, those parametric, but it's just sort of doing it within the context of the 3D model. Okay, so but we can start building that rake in a much more complicated way. A curve being more complicated, or even if I'm working on an arena, I can sweep the entire perimeter of an arena. So to do that, I'm just going to go ahead and select my sweep, edit in place. I'm going to select, this time I'm not going to select the profile, but I am going to select the line that defines my profile. So if I look at that in plan, clickety clickety, let's draw that. This time I'm going to go edit sketch on my path, and I'm going to choose an arc. So let's keep our similar width, and I'm going to go edge to build a curve. I'm going to delete the original path. The one thing I can't do with my path is I can't have disconnected lines, right? I could have complicated lines, but I can't have disconnected lines in terms of it defining the sweep. But now if I green checky box that and green check box again, it has changed the shape of that rake. Cool? Green checky box. And now I've got to redo all of these. Well, not all of them. I want to keep one. Let's change this to an X-ray. So I don't want to lose anybody here. That, those. Did I bend that the wrong way? Huh, that's fun. Yeah, it is kind of interesting. I wouldn't do that. I mean, this is like everybody leaves with the sore neck except for whoever has the center row. Edit in place. Edit the sweep. Edit the path. Back to level 1. I'm just like, I love doing fun things, y'all. This is great. Let's sort of rebuild this really quick. It goes here, here. I think I had that set at 12. Now let's do another arc. Except let's have it going the other way. Sacrificial pieces go away. All right, new path, new profile. That still just feels so wrong. What am I doing? It was. Let's just go architecture, component. Sometimes, this is just what you do, y'all. Sometimes it's just like, no, my brain is not working right now. And so I'm going to go create, sweep, sketch path. Again, I'm going to work, I'm trying to work like something close to where I think you all will land, maybe 60 feet across. Okay, and so at that point, I'm going to build somewhere. I kind of liked that 12-foot thing that I was going with. And then I'm going to build that into an arc like that. And then I'm going to delete my sacrificial geometry. I'm going to rotate the seat this time. I am definitely rotating the seat this time, right? So there's this, right? So then I am going to take, that's my path. I'm going to do my profile. First row is going to go back 3 feet. I'm going to go up 1 foot. And now I can copy that. Copy. Click, click, click. Sound, if you do not do sound effects, you're doing it wrong, by the way. Have to do sound effects. I'm actually going to move that whole piece up so that I can build that as row 1. And this does sort of speak to that idea of sometimes in Revit, you just remodel the thing. It doesn't take that much more time. With a lot of you all, I like you spend like 30 minutes trying to fix something when in 5 minutes you can just remodel it. Okay, so with this, now this is a curve, so it does offer some additional complexity. Like if I look at that from the east profile, it's a little trickier to see. So I am going to cut a section through here that I can leverage closer to the center point. And let's set that to 1.5 inches again as my scale. And I'm going to select my sweep, edit in place, select my profile. edit the sweep, and edit profile again, and let's lock these things in place. So in case you missed that nifty trick first time, hopefully you're seeing it second time, conceptually how that works. So now my sweep is going to be driven by my row heights. And for those of you that were aggravated that it doesn't make a new floor plan every time you put one of these tags in, now you're also understanding why it doesn't. Because it would be really annoying to have a floor plan for every row. Even though at some point in your construction documentation, you'll probably actually generate all those floor plans, but by default, you really do not want them. Okay, so I can finish this, and let's look at this in 3D, understanding that my chair is completely wonky. So let's rotate that around 180. Let's rotate that around. I am so glad that I record things for posterity's sake. Let's rotate that around 180. And I need to start this so that the axis of the chair lines up in a perpendicular way with the axis of the arc on my rake, right? So the easiest way to start that is, again, to create a few sacrificial lines. So under architecture, I'm just going to use model lines, and I'm going to use my snaps to find the midpoint of my arc. I'm going to draw that down. And it is also going to be very beneficial to me to find the center point of that arc. Now, if you are building this on some sort of parabolic curve, bless your hearts. Everything that I'm showing you falls apart. You are now officially using copy, 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 rotate, 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 which is totally doable. But there's really, other than really diving into a dynamo or grasshopper, it is going to take a lot of time if you move to something that's parabolic. Okay. There are, and that said, I mean, if the design has to go there, if that's where it's going for you, I can work with you on some of those things. And there are some tools like distribute along path. There are some things that will help, but really you're getting like most effectively into visual scripting at that point. So I'm going to take my chair. I'm going to move my chair along that line and to the back of the rake, right? I'm going to find the center of my arc by doing another model line. Nah, I'll risk it. And I'm going to go just anywhere along the arc, and I am going to make sure that I am drawing that line using a perpendicular snap away from that line, right? So let me just kind of walk through that again, what I did. Started a line anywhere along the arc, and then I can move my mouse. Not sure what that snap is. Oh, that's a 45, right? I don't want 45. That's no good. I want perpendicular from the line. And if you're not sure what you have, give it a second. Revit will tell you, right? I don't need to make that line all the way. That's why I've got trim. So if I trim these two lines together, let's do modify, trim to that, gives me my center point for all of those circles, right? So now I can select this seat. Let's make sure it's set to the right height. Of course it's not. That should be set to row 1. Because remember, I cannot do that after I do an array, but I can set that to row 1. And let's also look at something too here. Let's assume, scary word, that that line right there is going to be the edge of my seating. So I want my second seat or my last seat to all line up on that edge. Okay? Let's do a center aisle as well, because that seems like a fun thing to do also. Architecture, model line. Right there. Bruce, do performers hate having a center aisle? All right. Seems like if somebody was walking up and down a center aisle, it could be really distracting. I don't know these things. All right, so what I'm going to do from here, I know I want my seats to live between this line and this line. Okay, so I'm going to select my seat. I'm going to select array. I'm probably going to get this wrong the first time. That's okay. I'm going to change from linear to radial. I still like working with this notion of the last seat, the first seat and the last seat. But what I need to do is I need to move my center point to the center point of that radius. And my video card just threw up. There we go. That's my center point. I need to place my center point on the center of that radius. Okay? So now I can go this to that is my arc. And I want 20 worked last time. Maybe 20 will work this time. Yeah, it's about right. But I want to change the length of this arc because I really wanted it to start right there. And now that's too many. You can see where they're overlapping. Let's drop that to 18. Cool. Let's move back a row. So I'm going to copy. This is going to move from here to here. Again, I can snap to perpendicular. That I need to ungroup, and I need to say you are now on row 2. I can select that one, and I can say array, radial, last. Again, I'm going to drag my center point to the center point of the arc. That is my first seat. That is my last seat. Might be able to fit 19 in this time as that grows larger. And so on and so forth. Cool. Questions that pertain to modeling. Okay, I'm going to stop the screencast.